In this lesson, I'm going to take you through the different tools that Bubble has for you to help you test your application. Not just test, but also troubleshoot in case you run into any errors. There are a few things that you can use to help you find the source of the problem and what you need to do to fix it. So the first one is your debugging tool. Whenever you preview a page in your application, Bubble will automatically apply this debugger up here. And that's going to add this toolbar at the bottom of your page. If you remove this from the URL, then the debugger will not show. So the debugger is made up of 3 different sections here. The first one is running your page and running workflows at different speeds. So if you keep it on normal, which is the default, then you can test your page normally as if any other user would. You can see I'm switching between tabs here and things are happening on my page. Now, if I go into slow mode, then I try to trigger a workflow. So I'll click on this tab here and I won't touch anything, but you can see that the debugger is just kind of moving things along very, very slowly. This is not a setting that I use very often. I don't actually find it too helpful because there's not a lot of time to see what's going on there. The step-by-step mode is something that I use all the time though, because this is how you can actually pause the workflow and see everything step by step, inspect all of the things that are going on in the application. I suppose if you had a workflow that was many steps and you needed to blow past some of them because you knew where you weren't going, you knew where the thing to check was and it was like further down the line, then slow could at least get you there faster. But I do tend to stay in this mode here if I'm using the debugger. So if I select this and click on job posts, the only workflow that I have set up for job posts is to change a custom state value. That's what I expect to happen. So I will click on that button there and I can see here it's going to run me through the exact workflow that I've set up. Button job post is clicked, that's the event. And if I hover over this text here, it's going to highlight the button there so I know exactly which button it's talking about. And then I'll click run next. I can get a preview of the next action that's coming up. So run next, and now I'm on that action. And this action is to update that custom state. So the element is on the company. That's where the custom state is stored. The custom state itself is called current tab. That's the one that I created. And the value is 1. This is a static value that I typed in there. That's really all that happens. So I can see exactly why this other group is showing because I've changed the custom state to that value. Now, if that wasn't super clear, I can now inspect this group and see why is this now suddenly visible? Why was the other group visible before? And then clicking on this group made this clicking on this button made this other group visible. Well, that's where I can use the inspect tool. So I'll click on this here. It'll open up your inspector. And what you need to do is select an element. So I'm going to either click on the element out here, or I can search for the element on the right. These are all of your elements on the page, and I can search by their name. Again, another reason why you want to make sure everything is labeled. So the group that I have just made visible by clicking on the job post button is a group called group job post. And we can see that I have a whole bunch of them. It's probably all of the inner groups that I have inside of here. So clicking on the group will also get me there faster. Once I've selected an element, I get all of the properties that are currently active for that element, because remember, you can create conditions to change the properties. And in fact, if you have multiple conditions, Bubble will tell you if a condition is currently active or not. If it is active, this will show up in green. If it's not active, then it'll show up in red. So I'll show you an example here. I'm going to select the applications button, and that button has a condition for when the current tab is 2, then the background color will change. But that that condition is not currently active. We can see it's red. And I can see why it's not active if I continue to evaluate these expressions here that I've created. So anything in blue that you see in the debugger, you can actually click on that. So when I click on that, it pulls it up over here on the right side to evaluate the expression. I can pick apart every piece of this expression and see where it's coming from, why it's saving or using a specific value. This becomes really useful when you have a lot more happening on your page and things are interconnected, and you just need to pick things apart. So I can select group company, and it will show me, where is that group. I can hover and it'll point it out for me. I can select the current tab, which is the custom state on this element, and I can see that the value of the current tab is currently 1. So this expression that I've created for the condition on this button is not true. The group company's current tab is not 2. So if I select is, which is supposed to do that check of true or false, it will tell me yes or no. Is it 2 or is it not? If I select current tab, it's telling me that the value is currently 1. So no, it is not 2, which means that this condition does not pass, and so that color does not change. If I go over to this button here, I can see that the condition is kicking in because the current tab's value is 1. And remember, this was changed to 1 when I clicked and ran that workflow to change that state. So I get more information about the condition. I can see the color that's being changed. Again, if I click on this here and I select is, it's telling me yes, this current tab value is 1. See, 1 is 1 there. And I see all of the other properties for the button as well. So if there's ever anything that looks off to you, you can inspect all of these elements or run the workflows step by step in case something is just not behaving in the way that you had programmed it to. So another example, let's do a different one, is to create a post. Or actually, I will click on edit so that it can pass the data over to this group. So I'll hit step by step and then edit. And when edit is clicked, we're going to display data in the group job post. Okay, so run next. And here I can see which data is being displayed. This is a great example of how running your page with the debugger on is the only way to see exactly what values are being passed, what values are being stored to the workflows or not stored to the workflows. If you ever have a mix-up in element reference, if you're using the wrong input value or something like that, this is where things will get revealed. I highly, highly recommend you get comfortable with this tool because it'll really save you a lot of headaches down the road and a lot of guessing too. I mean, this really just tells you everything. So with this action, it's meant to display data in this group, which I can hover over to make sure it's the right group. And the data to display is the parent group's job post. Okay, so something like this could easily reveal that the parent group does not have a data source set to it. If I clicked parent group job post over here and this was empty, then I would know immediately to go check the data source of that group that contains this button here. Because I would know that the reference to that record is not being passed through and the button is not actually able to pass a record to the group. If I were the error that this would cause is that clicking on this button would keep this blank. If I was clicking on it and expecting it to be filled in and it's not, that would be really confusing because I've set up the workflow properly, but only by running the workflow in this step-by-step mode would I be able to see, oh, there is no group, there is no post being passed through because there was no reference being set up in the data source of the group. So that's something that could easily be overlooked, and it does get overlooked. It happens all the time. But because I do see content here, I know that clicking on this button will pass data successfully to the group. So I can continue to run, and I can see, of course, everything does show up properly. So your debug tool is very, very handy for completely breaking down every piece of your app. There are two other kind of more subtle options here. If you click on inspect, there's a very, very tiny text here that says show responsive boxes. If I click on that there, then I can actually see the borders, the boundaries of all of the elements within their basically within the boundaries of the elements that you've created on the page, but it'll show you how the responsive engine is looking at them too. So the responsive engine is actually expanding the width of this particular text. So I can see, if things look more squished to the side and I turn this on, I can actually see in real time, oh, okay, the responsive engine has actually allowed this text to expand, which is maybe not allowing other things over here to take up more of the center space. This would help me see that more clearly. The other more subtle piece of this debugger tool is this icon right here. Clicking on it right now isn't going to do anything because I don't have any server-side errors. If you ever have a server-side error, this will turn red and have a number in case there are multiple errors. When you click on it, this entire window will change and it'll actually list out like a log what the errors are, and hopefully the messaging is clear enough for you to go find the source of the problem and provide a fix. But examples of server errors would be if something goes wrong with a plugin, if you've created custom API connections and they've just not set up properly, if you don't have the right authorization to connect to APIs. Those are things that are not being triggered by problems in your workflows, but maybe problems connecting to an external service. Or maybe your workflows are taking too long to process, you've reached max capacity, and your workflows have timed out. That would trigger a server error as well. It will be pretty noticeable if you have your debugger on, of course, because this will turn red, so you'll see it if there is a problem there. Another tool to help you test is previewing your application in one of these safe modes. By clicking preview on its own, you're going to preview with a normal setting, which means that everything that you've designed and set up will apply here. But you can also preview in a safe mode, which means that you can run the page without any custom code that has been added, because there are certainly times where adding in custom HTML or some plugin that might not be correct and could end up breaking things on your app. It could disable stuff. It could just prevent things from working properly. So running your application without that code will at least let you isolate the issue. So you know that if you run it preview, a normal preview, and everything is broken or something's broken, and then you run it in a safe mode and everything works again, then you've at least isolated the problem being due to some custom code, whether it was custom HTML or a plugin or both. This lets you choose to run the page with that safe mode on. And then, of course, you also have your issue checker, which we have referenced a few times in the course already. Anytime you have something that's missing with a setup in your elements or in your workflows, or if, what else would this throw? If you've deleted items and you're still referencing previously deleted fields or previously deleted elements, this would also throw some issues. And this is very handy because you can actually click right on the issue and it'll take you exactly to where it is. So I've previously set the index page to have a mobile version page, but I have since deleted that page. So now there's kind of an empty reference here. What I need to do is select this empty space to clear that out, and now my issue is gone. Another issue that I currently have here is I've installed the Facebook plugin, and I'm using an action for the Facebook plugin, but I do not have my keys or anything set up there. So it's basically saying, hey, you need to set all this up or else that action is not going to work. So that's a nice little feature there to help me identify that. So your issue checker, very obvious because it's a bit red here. Also, when you go to deploy your application, publish your app, you actually cannot deploy unless you have all of your issues cleared. I will show you a little trick to bypass that in the lessons about deploying your application, but do try to address all of your issues as much as possible. They're there for a reason. Make sure you keep this list in a low number, because the more issues you have, number one, the more time you're going to have to spend fixing them all, but also they're just going to have a ripple effect throughout your application. The issues are there because things are just not set up properly, so your app's just not going to work very well. So do pay attention to this section here. Test your application a lot. Test every single time you make a change. Have other people test the app. Have other people break the app. Try to break the app yourself. You want to make sure that you find all the holes before your live users do. So when you're first starting out and building your application, there's obviously going to be a lot that will need to be filled in. But when you get to the point where you're ready to publish and ready to have other people using the application, make sure that you have tested the application front to back, up and down, inside and out, to make sure that there's nothing missing. You certainly don't want to accidentally expose data to people who shouldn't be seeing the data. You don't want important workflows to have an error or not respond to an error properly. Essentially, go through your application as every type of user that will be joining, will be signing up. If you have multiple types, make sure you run the application as these different types. Run the application under different scenarios. What happens when there is no data to display? If they first signed up and they haven't created anything, what are they looking at? Is it just a blank screen? Does that screen look broken? You do want to account for every single scenario. What happens if a user decides to delete their account? Are you making sure you're redirecting them outside of a logged in users only page, taking them back to the index or some login form? Just test all the time. Anytime you make a change, the bigger your app's going to get, the more ripple effects that these changes will have. So try to anticipate any additional adjustments that need to be made anytime you add a new feature or remove a feature or just change one. Do regular checks and front to back tests of your app. Obviously, the more eyeballs you can get on it from people that you trust, the faster you can get through your testing. But also, you see your app in a certain light. You're the one that built it. You already have expectations. You know how things need to work. It might not be so obvious for other users. So definitely create a safe testing space between a team of people that you trust and have them use the application kind of blindly so that you can get honest feedback about how everything's working and if things are intuitive enough for your users. And finally, what I would also say is if your application is going to be used across multiple devices or even across multiple browsers, definitely test your application in those different devices, on those different browsers. Make sure that things look the same on all platforms. You are going to find some differences that, browsers will render things a little bit differently in some cases, like fonts and things like that. So make sure that however you design your application, it's as balanced as possible on all the platforms. You're not ever going to get 100% cross compatibility because browsers are their own platform. They will handle things a little bit differently, but being aware of the differences ahead of time will at least let you prepare for any user questions that you might get, or at least help you create any workarounds to minimize those differences from even being noticed. So there are other tools out there that let you check browser compatibility. For example, this is one, Browser Shots. This is just kind of one that I pulled from Google, but there are lots of other ones out there. They also let you render for different mobile devices. I highly recommend using Chrome's Inspect tool here. You can actually enable this responsive preview that lets you see exactly what your page will look like depending on the device type. And you can choose different sizes and things like that. So making sure that things look as balanced as possible is also important because your users are going to come from everywhere. They're going to use different devices, different models, and you want to make sure that you're prepared for everything. Another more advanced tool to help you troubleshoot your application is actually your server logs. Bubble will log every activity that happens in your application along with the timestamp and the user who triggered it over here in this section under logs and then server logs. I'm going to run a quick search of my logs so that we can see the activity that I've run in the past few hours here. And you can see everything is completely split out, like a history of your activity. You can see the name of the action that was involved, the user that triggered it, their unique ID, a date and time stamp, and this is according to your time zone, and then any relevant messages that might have happened. So for example, this was an action to send an email that had a condition on it, but the condition failed for whatever reason. In that scenario, when this action was set to run, the condition was not met, and so the action did not go through. I can further zoom in on that workflow to get a more detailed sequence of events of how it got to this point where the action condition failed. So to start, this button was clicked, and the radio button's value was this value. And then, so that began a workflow, and it triggered this workflow event, which was allowed to go through because an event condition passed. The action signed the user up, went through properly, no issues there. And then there was an action to send an email, but with the condition, it didn't pass. So this didn't happen. So if I was running this workflow where I clicked the button and I was expecting an email to be sent, and my workflow looks like it's good, then I could come into here into the logs and see, oh, okay, it failed. So I know that an email was never going to send because something was going on with my condition. I also would have been able to see this if I had run that page and that workflow with the debugger on, because in the step-by-step mode, by the time it got to this action, I would have seen that the condition was not being met. That condition would have been labeled in red, and that would have helped me evaluate it as well. This section is very, very handy for really breaking down every component of activity. Depending on your app plan, you're only going to be able to go back a certain number of days. So check with the pricing page on Bubble's website for how far back you can go. But you can choose a date to jump back to. You can also filter your logs by specific users that might have triggered activity. By entering in their user email. And you can also do keyword searches by typing in specific words so that it filters that way. Remember that your application does have two separate versions. So because of that, you will have two separate log records, one for your development version and one for your live. So you can click this button to switch between the two. And then the final thing I want to share is filling out a bug report and sending to the Bubble support team. If you navigate to your help menu, and then at the very bottom of that menu, you can click report a bug. This gives you a form that you can fill out to send to the Bubble team. They're really great about responding to this and helping you find the issue. Basically, you fill out this form and you want to give them as much detail as possible. I can't stress this enough because, they get reports all the time from people who are learning how to use the platform, and understanding exactly what their issue is will help them help you in an efficient manner. And the best suggestion I can give you is just be as detailed as possible. And what you can really do to help them out is isolate the issue as much as you can. If you have a completely fully built application with a lot going on and there's an error that's happening deep in the middle of it, they're going to have to spend time understanding, first of all, where to find the error and how your app works without having to, create data to reproduce the issue. That might take some time. So if you can, create a test page and try to reproduce the issue on a blank test page. Number one, that usually allows me to see exactly what's creating the issue, and it turns out that it's not a bug, and I can actually fix the problem on my own because I've completely isolated the problem on a blank page by stripping it away from everything else. That actually happens all the time. When I'm about to fill out a bug report, I create a page for the bug report. I try to reproduce the issue on that blank page, and it turns out the issue isn't there, and it's actually something else that has been revealed to me. So that's just kind of like a nice side effect that tends to happen. But if you still do see that bug and you were able to isolate it, it's going to help the Bubble support team get to your question and provide a response so much faster. So just be as detailed as possible. Help them out as much as you can, because they're only going to be able to help you that much sooner. All right, so this is just a form that you'll fill out. It'll send them an email with all of this stuff. You'll also get a copy of the email as well. And yeah, I hope you don't run into too many bugs, but this is nice to have here as an option.